Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Christen Gilchrist is the founder of Core Potential Solutions. She says that growing your network is not just about going to meetings, it's also about the people that are around you all the time. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today, Christen.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're an organisational psychologist, which I will ask you a bit more about in a minute. But first of all, have you always worked in the field of psychology? What's been your career path, Christen?
So I've worked in the area of psychology for around 14 years, private recently and obviously my own business, but I actually began my career working in a large complex organisation that we probably all know, the NHS, and I was in that for a long time on the front line in mental health, and then I went into sort of community crisis teams, and then I sort of decided to go into organisational development in the NHS, and then progressed after that.
Yeah, so what drew you to that field initially, mental health, and sounds like a very challenging area to work in.
Yeah, I mean, so initially I was working with the homeless actually, in sort of more social work settings, and there was an opportunity to do a pilot within a local trust, helping people on the ward to get into better housing. So I did that, and then because I got the experience of working on a mental health ward, I then decided that that's what I wanted to do, and I really enjoyed the psychology side. So I did my undergrad in psychology, and then I had this frustration of things not working the way that they should within an organisation. And I think we've all had that experience where, you know, we've got it's us or a friend or a family member that has been impacted by the way things are in the NHS, and I wanted to change that at a larger level. So I wanted to change the NHS, which was quite a large task. So
what made you leave the NHS ultimately?
I think I spent a while in organisational development, and I guess it was extremely challenging. It can be very tiring, and it's very, slow change. And I wanted to go into the private sector to see if I could have a little bit of a different experience, see if things were still the same in the different organisations, and see if I could make more impact. And then I've come full circle, and now I sometimes work in the NHS in that area, but as an external consultant.
Yeah. So tell me then, what is organisational psychology?
So it's human behaviour in the workplace. So whereas, when you're on the ward, you're treating patients, I'm treating the organisation. So that's looking at things like leadership development, it might look at performance, but the area that I'm really interested in is the part around friction and decision making, the way the actual system is designed. And my work allows me to sit at that intersection, I would say, having the experience with people, but also having the experience with systems. So yes, that's what organisational psychology is. The health of an organisation.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of umbrellas underneath it, though.
Yeah. And so what was it that attracted you to this niche in particular?
It's the impact for me, and the fact that I so consistently hear, I've got to go to work tomorrow, or I'm not really enjoying my role. And, we spend such a long time at work, it seems such a shame to feel that way. Obviously, sometimes we're always going to have the Monday dread if we've got a task that we don't want to do. But I think overall people should be able to come to work and feel comfortable and happy and enjoyment out of what they're doing for the most part of their life. Yeah.
And so when did you start your own business, and what was it that made you want to go out on your own?
So I started in 2020. And I still felt, again, back to that impact that I felt when I was in private organisations, I wasn't able to make the decisions that I wanted to make, or, change it in a way that I felt would really make, a longer term impact. So I decided to go out on my own. Actually, I quit my job and went travelling for a little while, which opened up my eyes to even more. And funny that was in 2020, because obviously that was when COVID hit, so I had to come back. And I just wanted to be able to go into organisations and truly listen to what was going on, and recognise what was not being said, and make suggestions for improvement that would hopefully improve not just that, the individual team members, but also the way that the business is run, help them to be successful.
Yeah. So who are your clients? Who do you work with?
So I work with founders, leaders, or small teams that are growing, that are starting to feel that friction. They might see some sort of inefficiency. They might see a little bit of burnout. There might be slow decisions, or teams that are just not as effective as they could be. And my role is to help them to remove that friction. So I'll look at how decisions are made, how time is spent, how people interact, and where unnecessary complexity has crept in. So a lot of my work is about making the invisible visible. That's what I always say. Especially those sort of behavioural patterns that quietly drain that energy in people and slow that growth.
Yeah. And what sort of sectors are they in?
So I cover all sectors because every organisation is different. I've worked in sustainability sectors, technology sectors, and more recently in sort of venture capital firms, because obviously that's a lot where chaos comes when two teams, two organisations, two different cultures are joined. And there's not always that really clear roadmap of how it's going to impact the people, and how we're going to put these two systems together, and what that might look like.
Yeah.
And I think that the psychology behind that can be quite damaging to people. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people feeling they've got a different role to come into. So yeah, that's the part that I find really interesting.
Yeah. And where are your clients?
Mainly in the UK. I do work internationally, but that's more for sort of associate work.
Yeah. And how do you work with them? What sort of form does your help take?
So usually I would come in and do a diagnostic, so look at that root cause. I might have conversations with leaders or stakeholders and team members, and then I would create sort of what I would call a 90-day efficiency roadmap, and look at the total cost of inefficiency. So if this decision sits with X for this amount of time, this is what it's costing, and this is the impact on the team. And I try and do that with three angles. So a speed tax, so that's the the delayed decision making, the layers of approval. Then I would look at the bloat tax. So this is the reoccurring meetings. I did some calculations the other day, and I was thinking about, so if you have one reoccurring meeting an hour a week, and you say you have 12 senior leaders in there, and it costs about £90 per hour. That's £56,000 we're spending each year on reoccurring meetings. So I feel very strongly about meetings, how they're structured, what they're used for. And then I look at the talent tax. So this is, in small businesses, we have a lot of individual contributors. They're experts in their field. They're then promoted to managers or leaders, and they haven't been given the appropriate training. So look at that, the unfunded leadership that people go to, and that has a huge impact on the people that they lead and on themselves as well.
Yeah. And are they surprised when you show them the figures, the cost of delays, for example?
Yeah, it's a shocking thing, isn't it? We think, we'll just have this meeting. We love to use the term alignment. Let's just align on things. Well, actually, meetings should be spent for problem solving, for decisions, for things that actually move the business forward.
Yeah.
And that's my role, is to kind of facilitate that conversation in a really diplomatic manner that can help leaders see this and help team members feel heard.
Yeah. And how long would you typically work with them for?
It's dependent on the organisation, but anywhere, 3 to 6 months. But sometimes I'm working a lot with them in the initial periods, and then it's kind of check-ins just to make sure things are running smoothly.
Yeah. And so tell me about the benefits then, and what kind of feedback you get from people.
So the benefits are obviously return on investment in terms of actual income, and the revenue, that I should say. And then the other benefits are the team members that, feel happier coming to work. I'm sure you've heard that statistic of if you sit within a high performing team member, it increases your performance by this much. A low performer, then it decreases it by even more. I think it's more than half. So performance metrics are better. Team members are feeling happier, morale is higher, and then you've got that really clear return on investment in terms of time, resources and revenue.
And what have your clients said about the work that you've done with them?
Yeah, so I think feedback has been that I take a very evidence-based approach, coupled with that holistic well-being side from my mental health days. So I'm able to put things in a manner that people can understand, and they don't feel like they're being told that they're, doing things wrong, but perhaps this is how you can do it better. I'm a very warm person. I like to have a little bit of humour as well, to make it feel a little bit lighter.
Yeah. So what common problems do you come across within your clients?
I think the most common one is individuals being promoted to a leadership role. It's a difficult one where you think that person is hitting their performance metrics, they're doing really well, they might be bringing business in, let's promote them. But you can't promote somebody without giving them that emotional intelligence and those leadership skills that they need to lead other people. Particularly when you're in smaller businesses, that delegation side is really, really tricky. People are sort of willing to hold on to that work because they know that they can do it better, or they're not better themselves, but they can do it well themselves. And that letting go is very, very important.
Yeah. Can any business benefit from what you do?
Oof, I don't know whether I want to take a claim to that. But I would say, if you've got a psychologist there to facilitate those conversations, then yes, even if you get something very small from it, I think, yes, an organisational psychologist will help you to come in. They'll help you, like I said, to see what's not being seen, making that invisible visible. Because when you're in, the trenches of your business and you're trying to grow it, sometimes it's really hard to take a step back and have somebody ask you those right questions to uncover, the truth of what the situation is. And that's where coaching comes in, asking the right questions, the open-ended questions to get to the crux of the problem.
Yeah. And are there many other coaches working in this niche?
Yeah, I think coaching is a very common thing that goes alongside organisational psychology, because you kind of need it to be able to do the work. Not everybody does, but it's quite common, yeah.
Yeah. And so what's the best thing about your job, Christen?
Meeting people, because I'm a very sociable person, having that curiosity, and being able to, feel that confidence to ask those questions, and then the impact, when you see the difference at the end, that makes the most difference to me. I'm a person that is very much like that. I remember actually sitting on the top of Kilimanjaro with my sister and my brother, and I said, well, we'd raise money for charity, and I thought, well, what if this isn't enough? What if we haven't done enough here? And that's really what I'm about. It's about making that really big difference to people, and helping them to see that things don't have to be seen in a negative way, and there are things that we can control.
Yeah. So let's move on to talking about the networking now. How do you like to grow your network?
So I enjoy face-to-face, I'll say that first, and I like to go to different places where I think I might meet very interesting human beings, where it's a little bit more less structured, and hear those stories from people, hear those successes that they've had. That's my most favourite way.
I can imagine that networking meetings are quite fascinating from a psychological point of view, are they?
Yeah, so I do look at networking through a psychological lens, and I think it's not about the confidence or being the loudest person in the room. It's more around that trust and how people experience you. I think I said last time, interestingly, introverts often make excellent networkers because they listen well and they create space, for real conversation. And from a behavioural perspective, that trust does build through those small signals, not those big performances. And, I'm very intentional about where I spend my time. I would rather have fewer deeper connections than a large network that I actually can't sustain.
Yeah. So how much time do you devote to networking, and what kind of meetings do you go to?
So I usually try and do one local networking event per month. So I'm in Norfolk, and then I will have perhaps a couple of conferences throughout the year that might be in London or Manchester. But I think, don't you think, I don't know if you agree with me, networking isn't just about going to the events, is it? It's about how you network with the people that are already around you. And, and everyone that you see has also got a network. I think you have to approach that in a way of, curiosity. We know a lot. The amount of people that we've met in our lifetime is probably astronomical. So a lot of my work comes through sort of those trusted connections rather than cold outreach, and that's very much by design.
Yeah. So from a psychological point of view, have you got any good tips for networking?
Yeah, so I think stop thinking about networking as collecting contacts. Think about it as building relationship with people whose work or values or challenges sort of overlap with yours or don't. Secondly, I think follow-up matters more than first impressions. Some people say, I've had this, first impression, but I didn't do very well. But a thoughtful message after that will do really well rather than any type of pitch. And I think lastly, protect your energy. So choose environments that suit you and be selective. Networking shouldn't really leave you drained. It should feel very purposeful. And lastly, like I've already mentioned in this podcast, be curious. Ask those good questions. People remember how you made them feel far more than what you said about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely true. Is networking something that you recommend to your clients?
Absolutely, yeah, because I'm working with scaling organisations and they're always looking to scale a little bit more. It's very important to have that dedicated time to do that. It can fall by the wayside when you've got the day-to-day responsibility of running a business. But actually, what I have learnt the most is if I don't spend time doing the networking, I get to the point where you run out of business, or it is a little bit quieter. You have to do that preempting of networking before you need it, and it shouldn't be looked at as this is what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So one final question, Christen. If people would like to join your network, what is the best place for them to find you?
Probably LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best place. So Christen Gilchrist on LinkedIn. I post a lot of videos and text posts and links to my blogs and my articles and free resources on my website.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.